So my name is Dale Robertson. I serve as president of the Grand Rapids Public Museum. So we got a couple things we're going to do today. But you've already applauded him, but let's do it again. Dave Calendine is the organist for the Detroit Tigers. But that's not all. He's also the organist for the Detroit Red Wings. So even though you've played it, let's sing "Take Me Out to the Ball." Behind our baseball team, go get 'em, Tigers. World Series bound and picking up steam. Go get 'em, Detroit Tigers. Go get 'em, Tigers. My wife will be aghast. She's in Traverse City, it's family, when I tell her I actually sung in front of a crowd.
And she's going to say, you did what?
What? Yeah. So why did I do that? Well, so I grew up Wyandotte, downriver Detroit, Metro Detroit. That was a song that was on the airwaves throughout the 1968 season. And, on TV, on the radio, and, baseball, I think, brings out things and gives you confidence. And in all honesty, I did that in honor of Mickey Stanley, who's been here tonight. We have Dave Roseman, Mickey Stanley, but, we rode that wild ride. They lost the Tigers lost the pennant on the last day of the season in 1967. And so 68 was going to be the year, and you ride that ride, and that. So I was 10 years old, and I still know, I didn't sing all the verses. I spared you, but it's still in it's still in here. And there's lessons from sports, and there's stories from sports, and we're going to hear some stories tonight. But one of the lessons to me from this is Grand Rapids guy Mickey Stanley, center fielder, in the World Series gets asked to play shortstop. So what's that lesson? I mean, that's commitment to team, right? That's courage. Those are selflessness. I mean, those are just values, and we get those from sports. And I got Kaline, you and I talked, I got Kaline back in the lineup, right? So there's just multiple lessons that we get from sports. Baseball's special though of all the sports. It's springtime now, and we've got birds and singing, and we're thinking about propagation of species and all that. And there's that famous line: in spring, a young person's fancy turns to baseball. Because there is something about it. There's a heart and head kind of connection. It's captured through balls and bats and gloves, and tonight we're going to celebrate 1,200 signed baseballs. Yeah. Each with their own story and lessons that we all get to attach and take away and share. And so, how is it that, I don't know, I'm not going to say how many years, but a couple years later, I can still remember that song and can picture perfectly running home from my safety duty in time to see Lolich jump into the arms of Freehand for the last out, because the games were all in the day, right? I mean, it's just the whole, but it sticks with you forever. And so, Steve, I'm going to introduce you in a second and talk about the family, but I really do appreciate this, and Dave, I thank you for putting up with me. Clearly not a voice or moves like Jagger, but I appreciate being able to do this tonight, and for all of you to be here. So let me introduce Steve Nogengast. Became a Tigers fan when his family relocated to Detroit in 1961, when he was 10 years old. And okay, so I'm going to stop there once a second. It's baseball, it's stories, brother. We understand this. Right, 1961, most people think of 61, Roger Maris hitting 61 and 61. Who won the batting crown that year? Norm Cash, member of the 68 World Series team, right? So connections, so yeah. His first Tiger autographs were obtained in the 1990s during an event in the Woodland Mall. Yeah, while attending the Detroit Tigers and while at Detroit fantasy camps in Lakeland, Florida at Joker Marchant Stadium. Right. Steve's collection was formed by making purchases through national auctions, personally meeting with players, networking with memorabilia dealers, attending national shows, and I love this part, mailing baseballs to former Major League Baseball players. What were you saying earlier? You throw in a Starbucks card or something, and there's a little, yeah. So just all these ways to connect. It says here in the official, it is believed to be the largest collection of Detroit Tigers signed baseballs in the world. We present the facts, we put it out there, but it's up to us, each of us, to make our own interpretations. I'm going with it is the largest collection of signed, autographed Detroit Tigers baseballs of the year. It includes Ty Cobb, Kaline, Miguel Cabrera, many other Hall of Fame players, owners, managers, announcers, World Championship Series teams from 35, 45, 68, and 1984. Dave Rozema was here signing auto. You're going to hear from him a little later, and Detroit columnist Tony Paul. Steve and Mary, I mean, this has been a journey for you too. I know. In my marriage, it's never one. It's always, and for the entire family, it's been your journey too. And so Steve and Mary together want to recognize their 4 grandchildren. They are here in making this donation, what you're giving to us and all the other children of Grand Rapids, into perpetuity. That's a big word. You know what perpetuity means? It never ends. Right? So it will be here for generation after generation after generation. We want to recognize you for helping to make this happen. We're touching a lot of kids' lives, including one 67-year-old kid. So I thank you for that. And it's Harrison and Eleanor Zeidema and Connor and Quinlan Walsh. And they're excited to share now and to see their grandparents' collection. So let's thank them one more time. It's a family, we like to, we're an educational institution, we're a family institution. This is a family event. I'm glad you're all here. Please welcome the donor, Steve Nogengast.
Well, that's going to be hard to follow. I'll say that for sure. And one thing, tonight I timed this out to be 18 minutes, so it's not going to be short. And I may break a record for maybe Academy Award thank yous. So a lot of this is going to be thank yous because so many people have helped not only me build this collection, but helped here at the museum design and build the exhibit and promote the exhibit. So I want to thank all of you tonight for attending the celebration tonight. It means a lot to me and my family, and it's so special to have close friends and family and other people who care to see the exhibit. So thank you for being here. And if if myself and Mary and my family didn't get to say thank you to each of you personally, I'll have to say it now. There's so many people we tried, and hopefully by saying it now, that works. But I am pleased to have the museum take ownership of the collection. You know, a couple of years ago, I started meeting with various organizations, the Tigers, the Detroit Historical Museum, the Whitecaps a little bit, this museum, and it became very clear and evident to me that this was the place for it to be. You know, I met originally with Andrea Melvin and her counterparts, and basically, you know, just working with Andrea, the clouds parted that this is really the place where this needed to be. And you can see tonight from the exhibit why I selected this museum. So my speech tonight's going to have 4 parts. First, I want to talk about some former Detroit Tiger players who are here tonight. I want to thank a lot of people, so I'm going to overthank, but just to give you that heads up. I'm going to describe very briefly 5 of my favorite baseballs, and then I want to introduce Tony Paul of the Detroit News, who, by the way, wrote a great story today. It's out there on the Detroit News about the exhibit, and when you get home, Google Detroit News and see what Tony has written. So I'm going to start with Dave Rozema. And Dave was born and raised in Grand Rapids, attended Grand Rapids Central High School. He was drafted by the Tigers in the 4th round and signed with the Tigers in 1975. He made his major league debut at age 20, and 10 days later, threw a 4-hit shutout against the Boston Red Sox. And my grandsons, Connor and Quinn down here, they're Boston fans. You didn't like hearing about that, did you? So, but Dave in 1977 was awarded American League Rookie Pitcher of the Year. He pitched over 100 innings for the 1984 World Champions. And he was elected to the Grand Rapids Sports Hall of Fame. I had the opportunity to be around Dave at 11 fantasy camps, and I can tell you, he's one of the most caring, authentic people you can find. A fun-loving guy, to say the least. And also very caring, as I mentioned. He went out of his way to make sure all of us at fantasy camp had a good time. So, David, wherever you are, thank you very much for being here tonight. Okay? Next, I want to talk about Mickey Stanley. Unlike Dave Rozema, Mickey seemed like a guy who was probably in bed at 9 o'clock every night after drinking warm milk. Different personalities, both great guys. And like Dave, Mickey was born and raised in Grand Rapids. In 1959, he hit .524 for Ottawa Hills High School. And I think there's a gentleman here named Raleigh Smith who actually played with Mickey at Ottawa Hills. So I know you're out there somewhere, Raleigh. That's cool. Mickey signed with the Tigers in 1960, made it to Tiger Stadium in 1964. One of the most things that I know all of you know, what he's most famous for is saying yes to Mayo Smith so that Kaline could have a field position and a place in the lineup during the 1968 World Series. Mickey's last year with the Tigers was 1978. He played 1,516 games for the Tigers, his only major league team. And during his career, he had 201 doubles, 48 triples, 117 home runs, 500 RBIs, and 4 Gold Gloves. And like Dave, he's also a member of the Grand Rapids Sports Hall of Fame. So, Mickey, thanks for being here tonight. And drive home safely, Mickey. Okay. Also, I want to just make mention that Stubby Overmeyer, his daughter, Jane Overmeyer Keller, is here tonight. And can you raise your hand, Jane, wherever you are? Over here. Okay, over here. And just a little bit about Stubby. You know, for the Tiger fans, you would know that name. But he played 10 years in the major leagues, 7 of those with the Tigers. He won 58 games during his career. He was the starting pitcher in Game 3 of the 1945 World Series won by the Tiger. And Jane, I know around her neck tonight, she showed me his ring. She has his 1945 World Series ring. It's really cool. And then also in 1951, Stubby won another World Series ring as part of the New York Yankees. And after his playing career, he was a longtime minor league coach and also a coach for the Tigers from 63 to 66. And Greg Gromek, who I'll talk about in a bit, actually was coached by Stubby. So that's cool. All right, so next. Yeah, we have Jim Small, who could not be here tonight. Yeah, so Jim had some eye surgery. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here, but you can read what it says about Jim, and he wanted to be here and just couldn't make it. But I want to thank these retired Tiger players and family members for being here with us tonight, and they're all tied to the Grand Rapids area. And also with us tonight, as I mentioned, Greg Gromek's name, the Steve Gromek family members are here tonight. Steve pitched for the Tigers and the Indians in the late 40s and into the 50s. And I'll talk more about Steve Gromek later. So it's nice to have the Gromek family here. Now for the thank yous, and this is where I get a little bit long. First goes to my wife, Mary, and for several decades she let me buy these baseballs, raising her eyebrows very often. And I just kept buying. And not only that, we purchased museum cabinets. I had 1,200 of these plastic cubes that I kept my baseballs in. I know Andrea in the museum, Andrea Melvin, she has 1,200 of these cubes. I don't know what she's going to do with them. Anyway, Mary let me do my thing, but I think she's happy for one reason, that if I leave this earth before her, now she doesn't have to figure out what to do with 1,200 baseballs. I want to thank my daughters Kate and Steph for giving me, over the years, a whole bunch of official Major League Baseballs and cubes to replenish my inventory as I got autographs. And I mentioned Andrea Melvin before, and she was my first contact with this museum, and I met her at the West Michigan Winter banquet 2 or 3 years ago, and just again, as I said before, working with her was a pleasure, and she's a professional, and the way she researches, calling Cooperstown to find out how they preserve baseballs, and it's a science behind it, and I want to thank her very much for that. And then David Calladine, we got to thank him for being here tonight. Tomorrow, David's going to play opening day at Comerica Park, and then, a hockey game at night?
We have a hockey game that night too, so it's going to be a busy day.
Yeah, so he's got the hockey game tomorrow night. Greg English and I have been best buddies since 1966. We met as freshmen in high school. We went to Marquette University in Milwaukee together. And Greg lives in the Detroit suburbs, so he was like my agent for that area. When they had signing shows, he would show up, and whether it be down at Gibraltar, or over on the east side of Detroit, you name it, VFWs, wherever they were, Greg probably picked up 75 to 100 baseballs for me, for my collection. So thanks, Greg. You can raise your hand if you like. Another person I have to thank is Mike Maiman, and I've known Mike for 30 years. We attended 11 fantasy camps together, and Mike would coach me. Mike has a lot of high-end collectibles, and in these national auctions, I was kind of a rookie. I was kind of feeling my way around, and Mike would sometimes stay up at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, telling me, Steve, bid now, don't bid now, bid this amount, with his experience, and he helped me capture some real special items that probably I would have whiffed on without his coaching. Also, Mike helped me a great deal with these. We have 6 audio recordings in the exhibit, and they're each about 5 minutes each. And they're historical stories about different aspects of the Detroit Tigers. Really cool. I know tonight it's hard to listen to 5 minutes when you're with so many people, but if you could get a chance to come back, those 6 stories are really neat. And Mike basically wrote and put together the whole story about this guy named Alan Travers. I'll talk a little bit more about Alan Travers in a bit, but thank you, Michael. I know you're out there. Here, he's over here. He raised his hand. And then we have Lauren Naiman, Mike's daughter, with these audios. She was basically a technical magician. So as I mentioned, each of these audios are 5 minutes long. So I personally met with notable people about knowledge with Detroit Tiger history, and recorded them as they narrated stories. As I recorded these stories, there were lots of starts and stops, do-overs, some bad words, especially with McLean. We had to clean out some of those. I sent them over to the museum, and they said no. Anyway, Denny's funny, good guy, and but we had a lot of narrative at times, and basically I had a cluster of audio stuff that needed to be cleaned up, merged together, shortened, made to be seamless, and this is where Lauren worked her technical magic. And we have a gift certificate, just a small thank you for Lauren. And Lauren, I'm going to embarrass you. Can you come up? And I'd just like to, it's a gift certificate to a dinner at a restaurant that I know you and Ross like. But she was, I'll tell you, if you listen to these audios, I couldn't have done it without her. She was so good at putting this stuff together. Okay, next, I want to thank Crow, especially Jim O'Loughlin, for being the exhibit title sponsor. A group of current partners at Crow donated $25,000 to support this exhibit, and their names are twice on the walls of the exhibit. All the individual people who donated to make the $25,000 Crow title sponsor. And when Jim O'Loughlin heard that Mary and I donated the baseball collection, the first thing he said to me was, "Steve, Crow has to be the title partner." I mean, just instantly. And I said, "Wow, Jim, that's awesome." And within a week or so, he pulled together a bunch of partners, and it was done. So, I spent 27 years at this great firm. It gave me opportunities that were very, very rewarding. And so just to have the Crow sponsorship on this exhibit is just like frosting on the cake for me. I'd like to have the Crow partners who are here. I know a bunch of them, it's tax season and all that, but whoever they are, could you stand up, just the Crow people? And thanks again, Jim. Your leadership there was amazing. I want to give thanks to two more close friends. Brent Rector, a good friend of mine, helped me with some legal wording as we got around this donation. And then Gary Humphreys gifted me a painting showing me batting at Tiger Stadium, and it had Al Kaline and Jim Leland sitting in chairs as I was batting. And I didn't donate that. I held on to it. But I'll tell you, one reason why I didn't donate it, my face is very well painted, but it gives me the body of like a 24-year-old. It's great. There were some other sponsors as well, and they were Northern Precision Products, a company previously owned by my brother Bernie and my wife Mary. My grandchildren, who I think were recognized by Dale previously, they donated, they emptied their piggy banks, right, and donated. So can you guys stand up? Connor Quinn, Eleanor Harrison. Mike and Helen Naiman, Mike was waving back over here, and Helen, thank you for your sponsorship. And their two grandchildren, Hunter and Sydney, who live in London, they're not here. They emptied their piggy banks too. Became a sponsor. Sue and Gary Milligan, who I've known for 45 years, are here tonight. They drove in from the east side of Detroit. Very generous, and thank you very much for being a sponsor. My brother Don and Christy, his wife from Muskegon, became sponsors. Bill and Debbie Bartholomew, Jim and Betty Bolger, they're here tonight. And they're very special breakfast friends of mine and life friends forever. And we have these breakfasts regularly, and we solve literally every problem of the world. They're amazing. And then finally, the last sponsor is Jan Siegel, my sister-in-law from Grand Rapids, who's close to our family and is a second grandmother to our grandkids. So thank you, Jan. So all these sponsors contributed almost $40,000, which helps this museum put together such a first-class exhibit. And thank you for sponsors. I want to thank Dale Robertson, who you've all met. He spoke first, the CEO and president of this museum. He donated the 2 seats that are outside the exhibit. And I think Dale may know more Tiger baseball than me in talking with him. So he's a cool guy. And, you know, before leaving tonight, if you haven't taken a picture in those seats, you know, go sit in those seats and take a picture. And then there's another, you know, I'm not going to read off all these names, but all the people from the museum. Look at, you can see this list. I think that the biggest thing that I learned is I had no idea. Like when I first thought about donating this collection, I thought maybe 2 or 3 people could get an exhibit up and going. And you know, I had no idea. I mean, just you don't realize the complexities around design and building this thing and the promotional aspects of it and marketing and all these people. They're just high-class people. I sense very sincerely just the morale of the workers in this organization. They just love it here. They work well together. Just very noticeable. And Dale, you have a great group of people. I compliment you. All right, so what I want to do now is just quickly talk about the people who I want to recognize for the 6 audios that we have that are each 5 minutes. Denny McLean, talking about the 1968 season was great. Greg English and I got to spend 2 hours with Denny at his home in Brighton, and Denny was wonderful and did a great job. Dave Rozema talking about the 84 season was real interesting. I want to thank Carl and Greg Gromek for providing their insights about their father, who I mentioned, a 1950s pitcher for the Tigers, being on a Congressional Gold Medal with Larry Doby, another Tiger and Hall of Famer in Cooperstown. This medal is the highest United States award that can be given to a civilian. There's not enough time for me to tell this inspiring story at this podium tonight, but I will say it's about a 1948 photograph that was published nationwide in newspapers showing two teammates, a white and black man, hugging each other after a huge World Series win. So, you know, listen to this audio and hear the full story. And Steve Gromek had a great career. Yeah, you can see some of the highlights here. He pitched 17 seasons in the major leagues with the Indians and Tigers. Do we have the right slide? There you go. Thanks, Kate. You got it. And he won 123 games, and 92 of those were complete games. 92, think about that as compared to today. 17 shutouts. In 1945, he made the American League All-Star team. In 48, he won Game 4 of the World Series in a pitcher's duel, 2-1. That was, it was after that game that the famous picture was taken. Okay, I'm getting closer to finishing. So, slide 12 is what we're on. I want to talk. Bill Anderson, who's here tonight, did an audio, helped create an audio, wrote the audio and created it and narrated the audio about the integration of the Tigers, especially around Ozzie Virgil in the late 50s, early 60s. And Bill has authored several books on the history of the Detroit Tigers. He's given many speeches in public settings about the Tigers. He has the largest collection of Detroit Tiger historical photographs in the world, there's no question. And, you know, I joked with Bill, if Bill and I were 40 years old, between his pictures and my baseballs, I think we could create our own museum. And but you know, we're both old guys, and it's not time to do that. I don't think either wife would be very happy with us. But Bill is a former college president, and he was a state of Michigan cabinet member under two governors, John Engler and Jennifer Granholm. And Bill and his wife Anna are here tonight. Bill, can you just, I know Bill just had hip surgery. There, is he in the back? I want to thank Dan Dickerson. Tony Paul helped line me up with Dan. And I sent Dan a script on the history of Tiger Stadium. I thought, wow, this is really good. I wrote a good history. And I sent it to Dan, and he was really nice. And he said, hey, can I put something together on my own? Yeah, you can do it. He wrote the whole thing. And it's great. It's really good. So we got Dan Dickerson, voice of the Tigers, on that audio. And then our last audio is where Mike Maiman, once again, he wrote from scratch and narrated the whole story of Alan Travers. And he also helped to edit the Congressional Gold Medal and Steve Gromack. So Mike was a partner as well as Lauren on these audios. Just very helpful. So thank you. Okay, I want to quickly highlight 5 baseballs that are just special to me. It'd be easy for me to talk about some of the more famous baseballs in my collection. You know, like Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, Hugh Jennings, Miguel Cabrera, Cochran, Greenberg, Heilman, Crawford. But, you know, those are cool. I love those balls. But the ones that got me most excited were the no-names, the oddball kind of things that happened, or crazy things. And the first is Alan Travers. And once again, there's an audio on that. Alan was a 20-year-old student in 1912 in Philadelphia. He was literally pulled off the streets one morning to pitch for the Tigers that afternoon against the Philadelphia team on May 18th of 1912. He was not a baseball player. It's a little background here, but the Tigers decided not to be competitive the day Alan pitched as a protest against the commissioner of baseball for a ruling that was made that kept Ty Cobb out of the game. And the Tigers wanted to protest, so they wanted to be non-competitive. Alan pitched the full game, gave up 24 runs and 26 hits. Which my understanding, Mike, those are some records, right? American League records? Yeah, is that it? Yeah. And, you know, so to hear that full story, it's out there, and you can listen to Mike talk about it. The other interesting fact with Travers, he's the only Catholic priest to ever play Major League Baseball. Chuck Hostetler, here's a good one. This autograph is a hard one. I've never seen it other than what I have. Same with Travers. I've never seen it other than what's in the collection here. He's Major League Baseball's oldest rookie at age 40. He came up at 40 years old in the 1945 World Series. He made a base running mistake that cost the Tigers the game, and that was in Game 6. Thankfully, the Tigers won that game. The following day, Game 7. Because when that running mistake, it was late in the game, and he fell down, they tagged him out, and it was going to put the Tigers ahead. And if they held that lead, they would have won. But they lost Game 6 and forced Game 7. And if the Tigers didn't win Game 7, I think Chuck would have been as famous as Bill Buckner. I know some of you know Bill Buckner, some of you don't know Bill Buckner, but Bill Buckner had a great career, but he made an error in the end of a World Series, and that's what he's branded for. Even though he had great statistics and is an almost Hall of Famer kind of guy. And if you don't know about Bill, you can ask Rich Walsh. He's a Boston guy. Bill Buckner is not liked in Boston very much. Okay, Ray Oyler. This is one Greg English found for me. Ray Oyler found this ball in an auction, contacted me immediately. Ray had a batting average of 175, which isn't good for those of you who know baseball. And he died young, and there were a lot of people who weren't asking for his autograph. He was, 175 hitter, and people were not that interested. But what makes this ball real interesting is there's a lot of collectors who want the entire 68 World Series team, and they don't have Oyler, and it's a hole, and that drives up the price. A Ray Oyler ball is worth 10 times or 20 times more than a Kaline ball, surprisingly, just because it's supply and demand. So, but what makes Ray also notable is the fact that Mickey Stanley, as we heard Dale talk about, stepped in and put Ray on the bench so that Al Kaline could get in the lineup to play in the 1968 World Series. Baseball 4, Phil Mueller, who I know Greg Gromek knows Phil Mueller, and I think played with Phil in the minor leagues. He had a major league pitching career, 7 games, all in 1972. So I mailed a baseball to Phil Mueller asking for his signature. Instead of sending my ball back, he sent me back a different baseball than what I sent him. And he had a letter, and he said on the last day of being a Tiger, he went by the supply room and took out a box of 12 baseballs and walked out with them. And that he was so honored that I sent him a letter in a box that he wanted me to have one of those balls that he took. So I thought, isn't that cool? So that was, yeah. And the last one is Johnny Newen. Johnny Newen had a very ordinary major league career, very ordinary. But in 1927, there were 2 things that Johnny was involved with that are kind of remarkable. He made an unassisted triple play, only one of 7 in the history of baseball. And the second feat he had that year, he had 5 hits and 5 stolen bases in a game against the Yankees. And that 1927 Yankee team, for those of you who know baseball, they arguably is the best team in the history of baseball. So, all right, so thank you for hanging in here with me. I hope it was 18 minutes, but at this time I'm going to introduce the next speaker, that being Tony Paul of the Detroit News. So we got Tony's picture here. Looking good, Tony. Tony is another Grand Rapidian. So tonight we have these notable people, all from Grand Rapids. But we have to count Wayland as being part of Grand Rapids, Tony, which I think we do. But Tony came to my home a year or 2 ago to view the collection and wrote some really, really neat stories in the Detroit News. And Tony attended Wayland High School and Michigan State University. He's a self-admitted nerd who grew up wanting to be a journalist to the extent that he would write down during the day and report things that happened in his family to family members at dinners. Tony has 4 siblings, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, 8 nieces and nephews. And Tony's father and stepmother, Jim and Becky, are here tonight. So can you raise your hands? Yeah, over here. Tony played golf and baseball in high school and has a hole-in-one, that being on a 150-yard hole using a 7-iron. He's lived in 17 different places by his last count in his lifetime, and he's earned many awards for his journalistic writings, including terms here that maybe our journalists would know: the APME, APSE Awards for Excellence, and APME stands for Associated Press Managing Editors. APSE stands for Associated Press Sports Editors. And if any of you read the Detroit News each day, you'll see many of Tony's stories in podcasts. He has weekly Tiger podcasts that I listen to that are great. And later tonight in a Q&A, he can answer any all questions about the current team. So Tony, come on up, it's all yours.
Thank you. And that was the short speech. This is the long speech here, so buckle up. No, just kidding. Yeah, I visited Steve's home, I think it was February maybe of 2023, maybe January, and Steve emailed me saying, hey, maybe you'd be interested in this, maybe not, but I have this baseball collection, and you want to come check it out sometime. And having family over here, I'm over in Grand Rapids quite a bit, and but sometimes when you get these emails about story pitches, you're like, I don't know, but I'll check it out because I'm in the neighborhood. And I'm glad I did, because you walk into that, if you've ever been to his house, you walk into the basement area, and wow, the first thing I thought, seeing this massive display, was this man has the best wife in the world. And that's, of course, Mary, congratulations to you on getting your house back. This is, I mean, it's an incredible collection, and I'm very thrilled to be here to talk about it. Everybody remembers their first autograph, and my first was Sparky Anderson, the legendary Tiger manager. By the way, Steve kind of looks like he's ready to manage some games today. He's not wearing cleats. I told him, I said, Jim Leland used to wear cleats when he managed, but the museum frowned upon him wearing his cleats. So. Sparky Anderson, I sent him a letter. I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, and I enclosed a few baseball cards. In my mind, as a 7 or 8-year-old, I wasn't looking for an autograph. I was just, I was a big Tiger fan. I'm going to write Sparky a letter, and I'm going to gift him these 3 baseball cards. And a few months later, I got a letter back from Sparky, and he had autographed all of them. My first autographed baseball, I remember that too. That was Cecil Fielder at the height of his popularity in the 1990s. After he burst onto the scene, this little-known slugger, he came from Japan the year before, signed with the Tigers before the 1990 season, and ended up hitting 51 home runs. And that was back when 50 home runs was a big deal. We were at Tiger Stadium for a day game. I think it was me and my brother and my dad. I remember during warm-ups, Frank Tanana tossed a baseball in the direction of, well, my brother caught it. He threw it in the direction of a friend of mine, and my brother jumped in front of him. So I guess he threw it to my brother. But either way, being a young kid, I was pretty bummed because I didn't get a baseball. After the game, we went over to Casey's Pub, which if you've been down to Old Tiger Stadium, maybe you've been there, just west of Tiger Stadium. It was a popular hangout for Tiger players as well as police and firefighters. And my dad was a state trooper in Detroit. So we went there quite a bit after games, and Dad ran into an usher friend of his at the bar, and the usher learned that my brother got a ball that day, but I didn't. So the usher pulled out of his bag an autographed baseball of Cecil Fielder. He gave it to my dad, and later my dad gave it to me. So that was my first autographed baseball. It might be my only autographed baseball, so I got about 1,171 to go, where I get my own exhibit right out there. So that's the story of my first autographed baseball, and that's really the best part about the collection. It's been mentioned a couple times today, is the stories. The first baseball that jumped out to me, of course, if you look at the exhibit, and you could spend hours in there if you're a real baseball fan, but the first baseball that jumps out, of course, Ty Cobb, Georgia Peach, arguably the greatest Tiger player of all time. He had a career WAR of 145.1, which is number 1 all-time in franchise history. To put that in perspective, Al Kaline was number 2, and his career WAR was below 100. And if you're wondering how WAR is calculated, I have no idea, but those are the numbers. One of the greatest stories I ever heard about Cobb came from well into his retirement. When someone once asked Ty Cobb, Ty, if you were playing today, what do you think you'd hit? And Cobb said, about 320. Now Cobb had a lifetime batting average of 366, so the man said, why so low? And Cobb stared back at him and said, well, I'm 61 years old. Making sure these are in the right order. They're so organized here. By the way, give it up for the museum staff tonight. I mean, just an absolutely wonderful job that they've done. This is such first class. When I went to Steve's a couple of years ago and saw his display, which was amazing, then I came here and just was blown away by what the museum did here. I've covered a lot of baseball for the last 15, 20 years. I've still never seen a perfect game or a no-hitter live. Now, back early on in my time with the Tigers, I think I'm missing a page here. Hold on. I just praised the museum, and now the pages are out of order. Hold on. All right, I can wing this. Back in 2010, and you can see a little display on that in the exhibit. There's a story, and there's a bunch of stories in there. But back in 2010, Armando Galarraga threw what was considered to be, to this day, still the only 28-out perfect game in baseball history. You remember Jim Joyce, the umpire, blew the call at first base. Back in those days, I was what was called the standby guy. So if there was a no-hitter or a big event in progress at Comerica Park, I'd get a phone call from my boss and be told, get down to the ballpark, we're gonna need your help, whatever. So I get down, I drive down to Comerica Park, get right in the stadium, and the minute I walk in, the blown call was made, and the perfect game is over, and of course, you know, all hell ensued. But the best part about that is I've never seen a perfect game or no-hitter live, but that was one of the most memorable events I've ever covered, because if you remember what happened, Armando Galarraga caught the ball at first base. Jim Joyce said safe. And Armando Galarraga just looked at him and just had this big smile on his face. And Armando knew the call was wrong. Jim Joyce didn't know it at that time. He was soon going to find out. But Armando knew the call was wrong. And afterward, fans are mad, Tiger players are mad, Jim Leyland's mad. But the one person who wasn't mad was Armando Galarraga, who was quick to forgive Jim Joyce. Jim Joyce was quick to admit his mistake. And the next day, you remember, they met at home plate with the lineup card. Jim Joyce had tears in his face. And that's one of the most memorable events I've ever covered, even though it wasn't a perfect game, technically, it wasn't a no-hitter, because it kind of gave a life lesson. Because the one thing about life is they say, you know, you don't get a great sense of the merit of the worth of a person by when things are going well and things have gone right, but you get a sense of what a person is or who a person is by how they react when things go wrong. And I thought that was a beautiful lesson in baseball, still one of the most fun things I've ever covered. By the way, I still haven't seen a no-hitter or a perfect game live. I was called down to the stadium for a Justin Verlander no-hitter in progress, broken up in the 9th inning, an Anibal Sanchez no-hitter, broken up in the 9th inning, right as I'm walking in the stadium. So I'm a bit of a jinx, but I've been called worse, and probably by some people who've autographed some of those baseballs in the exhibit. There's a Maglio Ordonez autographed baseball. Maglio, what a moment. Few Tiger fans can forget where they were when Maglio hit the home run to send the Tigers to the 2000 World Series. And I actually wasn't at that game. I was an editor at the news back then and was working in the office. Our office was a few blocks away from Comerica Park. And I still remember watching Maglio hit the home run off Houston Street in the 9th inning, watching it on the TV broadcast. And as I'm watching it on the TV broadcast, I literally felt the ground shake under my feet from 3 blocks away when Maglio hit that home run. I mean, it felt like an earthquake, which is pretty much describes what that Tiger team was like coming out of nowhere. The Maglio ball, you'll see that in there. Tigers didn't win the World Series that year. They still haven't won one since 1984. That's why when I look at Steve's collection, I make sure to find Willie Hernandez, who threw the final pitch in Game 5 in 1984, and Larry Herndon, who caught the fly ball for the clinching out. I was 5 years old when the Tigers were the roar of '84. And you know how we can kind of all remember that first memory we have in life, or approximately? I swear that the first memory I have of life was being 5 years old and seeing the final out caught in the 1984 World Series. I remember watching the game on our TV in the basement in our home in Paw Paw. And that's right, Paw Paw, that's right. The town's so nice, they named it twice. That's where I grew up. And if you're a Tiger fan, Paw Paw, of course, is synonymous with Charlie Maxwell, the Sunday Slugger. And he actually lived right down the street from us in Paw Paw. When I see Charlie's autographed ball in Steve's collection, I don't think of all those home runs because I wasn't alive yet. I think of shoveling his driveway once or twice. He'd throw us a few bucks, me and my brother a chance to make a few extra dollars. And then Charlie, being the big shot in Paw Paw, became the first person in our neighborhood to get a snowblower and promptly put me and my brother out of business. Charlie died in December at the age of 97. And several years ago, then Tiger manager Jim Leyland had learned, and he had known Charlie from back in the 60s. Leyland started his career as a Tiger player and then a Tiger coach in the minors. He knew Charlie from back in those days. Back late in Jim Leyland's tenure, he learned that Charlie Maxwell had never been to Comerica Park. So Leyland, the Hall of Fame manager, a true gem, called Charlie, got him to the ballpark, took care of everything. He got him to travel to the ballpark, the food, you name it, everything. One of the kindest men I've ever met, Jim Leyland, and one of the funniest. Now that was a nice sentimental story about Jim Leyland, but he also had a bit of a gruff side, which to me was his most entertaining side. I remember covering a Tigers Blue Jays series. It was in Toronto in July of 2013. The Tigers had a great team that year. In fact, I would argue it was maybe the most talented Tigers team since 1984, even more than 2006 or 2012. But they had lost 5 of 6 games leading into that Toronto series. And then they dropped the series opener against the Blue Jays. And we were in Leland's office before the second game of the series. And I mean, it was, you can imagine the questions were negative given how the Tigers were struggling. And that's when Jim Leland went into one of the classic Jim Leland mode. He had a stack of player stats, probably about 2 inches thick on his desk. All the latest stats. And he started going through them as we're asking, why is your team not doing this? Why is your team not doing that? Why is your team struggling? So he went through this whole stack of paper, telling us how this guy who makes $15 million can't hit his way out of a paper bag. And how this guy who makes $12 million hasn't had a big hit since Memorial Day. And how this pitcher who makes $10 million can't find the strike zone with a compass. And this rant went on for what seemed like forever. He went right down the roster, not missing a single player, ripping each one of them, and asking, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? And his voice grew louder and angrier as the rant grew longer. And this is before the game, so he was in street clothes when he was meeting with us. But the rant was going on. And eventually he stood up and started to undress. First, there go his shoes, then his socks, then his shirt, his belt, and all the while he's still barking and swearing about this team. And there's about 5 of us reporters in the room. And we just sat there like in stunned silence, like we didn't know whether to get up and leave and let this man undress or let him keep talking. We didn't want to be rude. I mean, finally, he stripped off his pants and was down to just his underwear. And then he turned around, looked at us, and looked at us and just stared, and it was probably about a 5-second beat as he's down in his underwear. And he goes, what the hell are you looking at? Get the hell out of my office. I mean, I have that audio on recording somewhere. It was off the record, which, a lot of these meetings that we have with the managers and before games are all off the record, kind of to give us a little bit of insight. So I still have the audio, and when Jim, hopefully a long time from now, is no longer with us, then we might be releasing that audio because you're gonna get a kick out of that. That's the story when I think of that, when I look at the Leland baseball. And that's the really cool thing about Steve's collection, which includes nearly 1,200 baseballs and Al Kaline's Gold Glove. All these stories. And that's what baseball is. It's a game of stories. Ernie Harwell told stories. Vin Scully told stories. Bob Uecker told stories. But we all have our own baseball stories. And you've heard Steve's stories. Now you've heard my stories. And now thanks to Steve and Mary, you can check out the exhibit and spend all the time in the world looking at those baseballs and remembering your own stories of the Detroit Tigers. Thank you.